Hello and welcome to this week's episode of A Bazaar Podcast. A Bazaar Podcast with weekly episodes and different guests every week. As per usual, you can find us on YouTube as well as on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or via RSS feed for your podcast listening app of choice. Joining me today, we have my usual co-host, Sixten, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Sixten. I'm one of the co-hosts.
We are also joined by temporary stand-in for Walter Coolest, as well as our repeat guest and co-host of the day, Snazer. Why don't you give just a brief introduction for people who might not recognize you from last time?
Hello. I am Max, aka Snazer. I've been playing this game since closed beta. I've been streaming since December this game. I was holding for the most of the time rank 1 in the first season. I'm primarily enjoying Dooley. Feel free to check me out, and thank you for having me here.
Well, we're more than happy to have you. And finally, our guest of the day, Soulless. Why don't you do a brief introduction as well?
Hello, everyone. My name is Soulless. You guys may recognize me as Soulless Damned. I am a moderator in both Sixten's and Snazer's Discord. I'm a big supporter of the community, and I look forward to our conversation today.
Perfect. And that kind of leads us into, in traditional fashion, we'll have you, the guest, introduce what have you been playing this week? Soulless.
I have been playing Dooley, and more Dooley. I know on Mac's release, I was excited to play Mac, and then I was like, well, look at all of these new bugs. I have to play with them.
That's fair enough. And Snazer, what have you been playing?
So I tried Mac, but it was like a little bit changed last minute to what we previewed. I didn't like the gameplay too much, so I have been back to Dooley after 2 games of Mac, and have been enjoying Dooley as well quite significantly.
And what about you, Sixten?
To no one's surprise, I did play one game of Mac before I conceded, and then I played Dooley, and Dooley, and Dooley. So, yeah, a lot of Dooley here.
And to bring at least a little bit of balance to the show, me myself, I have been grinding non-stop Mac since its release, so I'll be providing some commentary on that, and to make sure that his absence is not all too heavily felt, I've also talked a bit with Walter, who's helped me out with some hot tips for Mac as well, that I'll make sure to bring up later in the state of the meta discussion. But not to bury the lid all too much, I think we can move on to the topic of the week. And this is a very funny coincidence. It wasn't originally planned to be this way, but when we had Snazer as our first guest on episode 1, it was right after the game got changed to this current day 1 system that we have with the 3 choices, and so back then we did a bit of a day 1 deep dive. But at the time it was primarily kind of speculative, and then after a while, I think in the eyes of most people, Gold Skill Start kind of cemented itself as the reigning, this is just the thing you do, up until this current patch, where there's a combination of like items that have caused shift in the meta and the perception, on top of the fact that the most egregious skills that stood out, mainly thinking about the burn ones, have been heavily toned down. I think that's led to a bit of a broader perspective on kind of how you can think about the starting choice, and it feels like there's a bit more diversity, a bit more discussion. We noticed during the week that it's kind of a very frequent topic of questions within many different streams and chats and channels what do I start now? And especially, with Mac, new hero, Dooley, new items, a lot of things have changed. So what do you start now? And so we thought we'd do a bit of a discussion, but not limited to just a simple this is what you pick and why, but rather go into a bit on kind of what our perspectives are on the reasons why you would pick any of the three choices. Because a little bit of a spoiler here, I do think if it is your preference, any of the three starting choices can be very successful, and it wouldn't be a stretch to say that they're all perfectly viable. But I do think there is some thought that can go into kind of like this general idea of why you'd pick any of the three. And so we'll discuss that in kind of like almost an evergreen fashion, as it seems like, at least for now, we're probably sticking with this system, so we want this discussion to be applicable to future patches as well, even if there are new skills or new items or new heroes. And to kind of start us off, Soulless kind of inspired me to bring up this topic too, since he's kind of he's repping the underdog in this case. He's running probably what I see as the least picked out of the three starts. So why don't you start off by telling us your reasoning for that?
So I've been playing primarily enchanted weapon start or enchanted item start. And the biggest thing I've noticed is Dooley's pool for bronze items got slightly smaller with the recent hotfix making coolant a silver item now. And his pool has a lot more added into it since a lot of these smaller bugs that we want to see in some of the in-game boards in that pool. So I feel like we have a big variety of options that we can hit right off rip. And these bugs happen to have a particular enchantment setup that makes them more beneficial, especially with the multicast or, for example, wasp with shielding or extra poison. It's very beneficial. And on a lot of them, even for crit chance, they give all your friends crit chance, not just like a normal deadly enchant would do. So I've really been pushing it, and they happen to make the pot even sweeter with having an extra 6 gold on start compared to what it was before. So it's kind of been something I've really been playing into, and I'm finding a lot of success with it. And I'm doing it on every core across the board because originally before you didn't want to pick it because you could hit something that was dead on friend core or also known as companion core. And now, like with all these extra friends added in that pool, it's a lot more viable in that option in my eyes. So it's kind of been something I really been feeling out and really enjoying.
And what about you, Snazer? Have you been, first of all, since you've been playing mostly Dooley, do you go for the same option across all cores, or do you have some variety currently? And if so, what have you been picking as your start?
So I, force of habit, started taking like skills still. The main reason I had was to say tempo is king, and I want to be as strong as possible on day one, and I did it. It had already starting to feel like though not being as worthy anymore with the nerfs on the skills themselves, like the changes, as well as it's somehow like falling like off faster. So the strength of the skill falling off faster means also less incentive to pick those skills in the first place. And so then Sixten talked to me and convinced me that I should take the economy option. Because Dooley is, for me, being played as find a few bugs and then a drill most of the time and sometimes something else. And then now I have all the money in the world to go hunting for them early and reroll the shops, even for 4 gold. So now I have been doing that. And it was like not depending on the core. And that felt a lot easier, like less stressful, a lot easier, more consistent. So I'm like really happy with the gold option, though I'm inclined to try out, after hearing Soulless, the enchanted item option, because like mainly the reason for the gold being good is, you have like a bunch of gold extra, but if I get like 6 extra gold on the enchanted item, that could be enough to justify go for the enchanted item, right? Like the difference is not too big anymore. The gap is like a little bit shorter there. So I think that is the first summary there.
Yeah, and before I kind of have a more overarching analysis that everyone will get to give feedback on too, but I thought I'd give everyone a shot to kind of speak their turn first, and I thought, Sixten, you had a good way of phrasing it on your stream earlier. You were a prolific gold skill player on Dooley, but now you're going so hard on income that you've even convinced Snazer to join the gang. So why don't you tell us a bit about your logic in making that switch?
Sure. So in the past, gold skills allowed you to almost guaranteed win the early game in the last patch. So by clicking gold skill, it said win days 1, 2, 3, and 4, which was very beneficial, of course. However, with the advent of Mac and with the nerfs to the burn skills, that is no longer what it says, because even when you click that option and you get like a burn and skill, you can still lose to Mac, because Mac has a super strong early game currently. Of course, he's a bit squishy, but I found that gold skills just didn't provide that early game power that they used to. And then I felt, well, gosh, why don't I just go over to income instead? And that way I now have enough gold to comfortably buy my gold chocolate bars, find the items I need to find. Because an issue I ran into with gold skills is I frequently had to sell my entire board to finance good items. For example, on day 6, I find a pyrocarbon in the shop. It costs 16 gold. I have -2 gold in my bank. I have to sell everything I own, and that is a feels bad moment. Whereas now, when I go golden income, I have 40 gold on day 5 somehow, because I have more gold than I can spend, and then I can buy these super impactful items, and I feel like that benefit is now much higher than the benefit of the skills. So that is part of why I've made this transition from skills to income. However, what Soulless brought up there about the enchanted item seems very promising to me, because I wasn't aware that the new bugs have good enchants. I haven't really looked into the enchants on them, but if that is true, then I think enchanted item could be extremely good on Dooley. So I'm open to trying that as well. And what about you, Metal?
Yeah, so I've actually been thinking on this quite a bit. When the new starting items originally came out, I actually personally went for income on Vanessa at the time. But after playing it for a while, I was eventually kind of forced to admit what was the common consensus at the time on Vanessa, especially expansion Vanessa, which is now Vanessa for everyone. Very cool. Skills are just really good. And it has had me spending a lot of time thinking about, why is that the case? Normally, when you look at the three things at a glance, you would kind of assume that golden income is guaranteed value, whereas skills are kind of tempo, and then enchanted items look like they're kind of, it's just a slot machine. It's like spinning the wheel for having a really high floor, but oftentimes a very low high ceiling, but sometimes very low floor. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that wasn't necessarily the case. And the reason for this is there are some things in the game that give guaranteed value. If you could have more prestige or more life, that's in a way guaranteed value, because it changes the breakpoint on when the earliest you can lose a run is. And a lot of the time, that's almost what skills are treated as. It's a way to get a bit of extra health by making sure you might win one or two combats that you maybe otherwise wouldn't have. But the biggest thing that I realized is that gold isn't necessarily going to translate into power. This relies on a crucial factor. In the early game, when gold is still a scarce resource, two things. Is gold a scarce resource on your character in the early game? Because during the tail end of last patch, I played a ton of Pygmalion to get kind of a broader insight into all characters. And the thing I quickly realized on Pygmalion is that he has the option to go for +2 income from the jungle ruins. That's his unique choice there. Which results in, on Pygmalion, it actually feels quite underwhelming to start gold, because you have this really easy way of just pressing that once or twice, and now you have even more income than someone who started income. So gold isn't actually that scarce of a resource, at least early on. And it kind of ends up in a similar situation with Vanessa, because if you just find a 4 gold star chart, the docks turns into an option that gives you 5 gold and an exp every time you press it. And a lot of the time, if you're playing a sort of momentum-based character like Vanessa, that 5 gold continuously can kind of sustain your economy almost through the entire mid-game up until the late game, where just one legendary item can mean that you have more gold than you spend in a run. And it kind of led to this awkward situation where gold didn't translate to power, but a starting skill did. Because simply a lot of the weapons had weak starting numbers, but maybe good speed. Like a katana is pretty bad, but a katana with right-handed for +40 damage is something like 20 times better than just a base bronze katana. You can't buy a 20 times better katana with gold. That's just not possible. And the same thing is true with deep sea vents with a burn skill. And especially I also noticed even that it was almost like my flexibility was more limited too. Because if you find a strong build that works without skills, and you don't have a skill that matches the build, you can still go the build. Like, nothing's gonna stop you from playing Shipwreck Aquatics just because you have left-handed, especially when there are some aquatic creatures that are weapons too, like the Zoroastrid or things like that. So a lot of the time, having a skill that enables one build while still keeping the option open to pick the skill-less build just means there are more builds you can actually go. Suddenly you're open to both single weapon and, Primordial Depth Charge with Yeti Crab or what have you. So I think that was an important perspective on it. But that then kind of brings me to Mac, where I started off going gold skill. And I know that's mainly what Walter's been playing as well. And a big reason for that is because on most characters, poison skills are kind of a brick. But on Mac, they're not bad, especially because there is this item that I can bring up. It's called Quill and Ink, which is a 7-second cooldown small item that starts at bronze, and it reads Poison 1, gain 1 regen for the fight. If you have no other weapons, this has +1 multicast. If you get this item with a poison starting skill, it can be incredibly powerful. And not just that, Mac has the Obsidian Shard, the reagent, which I have actually... I can spell obsidian. Is that not what it is called? It's called shard. Does anyone know the small 4-second cooldown Mac?
I don't know if it's inside of A Bazaar.
Oh, yes, it might not be. Are the reagents not in there currently?
Not sure.
Okay, but it's one of the reagents, which also makes it way easier to find. It's a 4-second weapon with innate lifesteal. One of the things that I realized really quickly is you're actually a lot of the time not supposed to roll that into an obsidian enchanted item, at least in the early game. Because if you have left-handed, you take that up and you find it at silver a lot of the time from like Jungle Ruins, I think it is. It'll have 50 damage with lifesteal on a 4-second cooldown. Like, that can single-handedly carry a lot of fights. And similarly, the reagents that let you enchant things with fiery or toxic, it's also a good way of kind of double dipping on your starting skill. So that did feel pretty powerful. But these last few runs, I think 2 or 3 runs, I've been doing income with the logic of... I think the main thing you guys mentioned that I agree a lot with myself is that nowadays, and this didn't used to be the case, but nowadays, a lot of the shops you find early on are really expensive to reroll. Like 4 gold on day 1, day 2 is a veritable fortune. And I noticed on Mac especially, one of the core things to do is there's a medium item, both a poison one and a burn one, which at the start of every day give you a lump of iron or something like that. It's a reagent that gives you the same thing as effectively a gold bar when you transform it. And I would describe that as basically it's Mac's star chart. It's the thing that solves his economy for the entire mid game is just making sure you get one of those to silver, either the burn or the poison one. It doesn't necessarily matter. You don't have to play it on your board. And you get it to silver. Every day you have one of these lead clumps. If you just transform once a day, it's 10 gold. And of course, docks with Vanessa's docks items give only 5 gold, but 1 exp. So I see it as kind of equivalent. It's this thing where it makes sure that there you have your extra 10 gold for the day. And it's created this kind of interesting disparity where, on one hand, you can say, since Mac has that and has good ways of utilizing skills, he should go skills because you can solve your economy in a different way. But on the other hand, you can say, if you think the thing that's the most important is to consistently find these items and then make that initial investment without having to sell your actual items to play on the board, the 12 extra gold and 2 income can really help you do that over the first 2 days. And I do think the first 2 days, maybe 3, is a core aspect of that too, where if all you're interested in is a bit of a boost for the very first day, I think it's quite possible, as Soulless mentioned, that plus 6 gold from the enchanted item start might be sufficient. It might give you enough gold to just reroll like 1 more shot and then you're kind of fine later on. But it's also possible, if you really want to keep rolling for 2 or 3 days, to make sure you find, be it the bugs on Dooley currently or the things that interact with reagents on Mac. It feels like there's a lot of potential merit to the income start as well. Especially the thing that I noticed more than anything was in some runs where I didn't necessarily have that silver money printer online yet. Mac has lower base starting health. he also loses to several of the starting encounters due to having just 50 less health in general. So you really want to make sure you go to the first shop, and you want to make sure you buy items that can beat it. You want to make sure that you buy a friend if you see it, because he only has 2, I think, early on 3. It's the salamander, the leeches, and the firefly. So you have to buy those to make sure that you can go to the furry friend. And he doesn't have any toys, and I don't think he has any food either. So it's just those 3 friends. So those are must buy. But you also have to make sure you bought something good enough to beat the first fight and then to beat the scrapper on day 2. But at the same time, you also want to make sure that you can actually buy these items that you need to keep in the bag to solve your economy throughout the majority of the game. But at the same time, you also want to make sure that you're not depleting your resources to the point where you can't actually keep your momentum going, because then was the point of picking the skill. And long story short, that's kind of what eventually landed me on thinking that I suspect Gold Start to be pretty good on Mac for similar reasons to what you expressed on Dooley, with the fact that being able to look for the bugs while they're still readily available, and at the same time being able to afford both rerolls and chocolates, has become way more valuable now than how it's felt over the vast stretch of the kind of gold skill start meta, as I think it would be fair to call it.
Now,
Yeah, go off,
if
Soulless.
I may kind of inform why I'm okay with the 6 gold and the less income early on, I tend to we always have a middle shop where you have that and 2 bad options. And I always go into middle for when we have that situation for one of 2 things. One, I want to get in there and I want to get either schematics, or I want to get the new Dooley item. Can't remember right off the top of my head what it's called.
Oh yeah, the
The
like fishing
SATCOM.
rod equivalent.
Yes, either I want to get a SATCOM or I want to get schematics, and that is my gold generator further out. And you'll have scenarios where you'll get in where, your only option is, maybe take an early income, take a free item. And free items just in general on Dooley to give you gold to continue on when you have no other options slots, because like early on there's no reason to go to a large item vendor. There's no reason to go to, I forget his name, the tree vendor, because you really don't
Barcoon,
want to
yeah.
search. You really don't want to search through Barcoon's inventory, because his reroll is really high, and he's just, you really don't have a lot of value there. Now, when we get to the days where we can pick up silver items, you're going to be able to see schematics. You're going to be able to pick up a DG robot. You're going to be able to pick up drill, as Sexten does. You're going to be able to pick up a plethora of things that are in that category for medium that are very good. And even race car is viable mid game for until about like day 6, day 7, and then he starts falling off. But making sure you really make smart choices with what shops you're going in and out of, super beneficial to have extra income by just items, because every now and then you'll end up in a scenario where, oh, I don't know if I want to play this or I want to play that, and I know Snazer here is going to beat me up, but Railgun is not completely dead, and I know he don't like him. He even has a command about it. But with the new tech changes and playing a little bit of Railgun and looking through all these matches I've seen this week, I think Railgun is viable to like day 6 or 7 and then into a pivot. I think overall, being able to get some of those items free is really solid right now. Just being able to pick up a silver schematics, and I'm seeing it quite consistently. Like every other shop, I'll see a schematics, or every 3 shops if
So
it's something I'm going into.
I guess this could move us into the state of the meta, which I have some input on. because I went on a 16 win streak on Dooley in the last few days. And so one observation I've made, and this is for Dooley only, is that first of all, you should definitely buy the new Dooley items. I think Dooley is significantly stronger with the bugs. They provide early game direction, and then they also hold up in the late game, which is very important. Items that are both good early and late are extremely strong for consistency, right? That means that you can rely on the same base plan no matter the day. You don't have to, in the middle of the run, throw away everything you own for something new. And then also, the way the bugs work is that they are extremely hungry for upgrades. They are not good at bronze. They are not even that great at silver. But gold onwards, they are super duper strong. What
to be
this has led
specific,
to on
you're
Dooley,
referring to the 3 of the bugs that gain more targets.
oh
with
yes, the ones that,
rarity,
yeah,
right?
true.
Yeah.
Yes, not the poison one. I would argue the burn one still benefits from upgrades because burn is very strong. But specifically the blue beetle, the wasp, and the black beetle, like those 3 are the ones that you have to upgrade at least to silver, ideally diamond or gold. And basically what that means is we no longer have that many skills on Dooley. When we level to 4 or 7, we always upgrade an item if we can. And then on 13, we might upgrade our fiber optics, we might upgrade a coolant, we might upgrade our beetle to diamond. So the new meta on Dooley is upgrades are super premium, and that is part of why I now go to every vendor. Like Andy, small items, sure. Non-weapons, heck yeah. Like I will go to any vendor that can have the beetles or the small new bugs because they need upgrades really, really badly. And this is a massive difference from how Dooley used to be. Dooley used to be the hero where you could play bronze items until day 12. Nowadays, he is kind of the opposite. You don't want to be stuck with bronze items after day 5. And I'm curious, Snazer, if you agree with this, or do you play a bit differently? Because I know you've been playing a bit of Dooley also.
I play rather similar, I think. Yeah, I think it's just similar. I do have though something else. I want to go back like 1 second on the skill versus income situation. I mean, I agree with what Phoenix said about how he evaluates now the situation and why income is better and stuff. I feel like one last point I want to make there is the following. I feel like the changing of the gold skills, like tuning them down significantly, like for example, let's go with the burn skills, has like weakened the traditional burn builds on Dooley significantly. And the reason why it was needed to tune down the gold skills was because you offer them in the first place as starting skills. I still think there might be a world where it would be better to at least partly change gold skills to be a little bit more stronger because like the burn gold skills feel absolutely underwhelming at the moment, but then somehow change the starting skills in general because now like no one is picking them anyway anymore, so you might as well give us another option and change the skills. Anyway, that is like something I wanted to add there. As for the builds, I think what I do is like I take the money and then we just go for the bucks and roll and try to upgrade them as fast as possible.
I agree. So on that point with the gold skills, and this is something I brought up on stream, is the problem with the way they nerfed this, that having gold skills on day 1 is inherently broken. Gold skills naturally show up on like day 6 or day 7, right? That is when you start to see gold items, gold skills. They are balanced for day 6 or 7, right? And the way the game works is that your health progresses not linearly but exponentially. So as the game goes on, you get much stronger day from day. So gold skills were completely balanced for like day 6. 9 burn on an item is not the end of the world on day 7 or day 8. Whereas on day 1, it's completely broken. So what they did is they now balanced gold skills based on day 1, which is completely backwards. I think it would have been smarter to change it to be silver skills instead, right? We get a silver skill on day 1. Because what has happened now is that, as Snazer pointed out, there is no more burn Dooley. You never, like, the burn skills are so underwhelming now, especially later. For example, on stream today, I had a 40 gold diamond skill that was your poison items have +4 poison. 40 gold for 4 poison. That is an example. That is, of course, the extreme, but it's the same for the burn. 4 burn for 40 gold in the late game. You will never click that. So I think having gold skills on day one is the problem. It's not that the gold skills themselves were too strong. They just aren't meant to be balanced around having them on day one. And I'm curious, Soulless and Metal, do you agree with this, or do you think?
I think there's also like something very noteworthy is the fact that you haven't necessarily mentioned gold skills in general or even burn skills. It's much more centered around fiery specifically, which I do think is very much the outlier here, where I think almost that skill should maybe be outright reworked a bit, because the problem with it, right, is that since it affects all of your items, it kind of needs to be balanced in a way where either it's only good if you have a lot of burn items, or if you make it so that it's kind of decent on one item, good on two, then it's going to be busted on four. And so maybe a good middle ground would be to make it so that it gained targets with levels, or it had like at least some kind of cap, like maybe 2 of your burn items or even 3 could make it kind of go a little bit less out of control. I also think another option is to make it start at silver and be 246 instead of the original 2468, because I do think starting with 4 burn on your entire board versus 6 burn on one item are both pretty reasonable options early and even into the mid game, while still not being as kind of crazy as 6 burn on everything was. Because 6 burn on everything, you play something like Mac, who can very easily have 3 or 4 different burn items between like reagents and candles and the fireflies after the buff, and then it gets out of control so quickly.
So there's something I think that a lot of us maybe realize and not realize at the same time. But I think another reason they really toned them all down, it was also a response to Mac being released and majority of his damage coming straight from burn and poison. And on top of that, fiery, gold, and left or right burn skills. The issue with that is early game, you're gonna have one burn item regardless. So you're looking at a three-way pool, blast patch, where it didn't matter which one you hit, you would take it.
Yeah.
I do agree it is way worse for ignition core, way worse for trying to play burn items with what's gone on with that. And then Dooley's really not pushed poison. I have been playing a lot of poison Dooley interactions using Wasp, which Sixten doesn't really like the most. But I think it's really punishing to go, hey, I went and have this at Diamond, because it's my best choice of a skill, because the other ones were too large choices on a Diamond vendor, and it gives me 6 poison. And I'm like, I could have gotten the same out of, getting loot drops. It's really lackluster. I think when we look at what possible thing I would probably do if I was tempo right now, I think I definitely drop the numbers. I would either drop early and then increase late game scaling so it has more of a bell curve to it. So go like 1, 2, 3, and then go 4 or go to 5. You know what I mean? So when you hit that late game upgrade on it, it doesn't feel so punishing, and then early game's not as punishing either. But I think if you go to do something like that, you're gonna end up in a scenario where either burn items across the board have to get nerfed and poison items, or we gotta completely rework a system where those skills start at X really low at where they're at now, and then late game, the upgrade dramatically changes because even last patch, Ignition Core for the longest time has always been kind of hard to make Ignition Core be the center of everything. It always switched to, oh, I'm going to play Drill now, or I have to play Lance. It was never, hey, my core's an actual core. This is the thing I want to play around. We've always pivoted to different items. And I think it's kind of punishing. And luckily, we have a glitch in the game where we can sell our cores now. So
Yes, we
it's
should
really
discuss that
weird.
actually.
Yeah,
So for those who don't know,
just to mention before we go on to that, I will say, because I have to kind of step in as the voice for 3 other characters. On all 3 other characters, like at the moment, Pygmalion, Vanessa, and Mac, I will gladly take Fiery still, because it is easy enough just due to the way their items work. On Pig, Matchbox, Ladle, and Hotstones are all 3 items you're willing to play on top of Lighter if you get it from the encounter, or Pop Snappers from the new toy vendor. It's kind of the same thing on Vanessa. Just +3 on a, even +2 a lot of the time on Deep Sea Vent can be really meaningful, because that +2 is effectively +6. And it's kind of been the same thing on Mac, where if you can easily get up to 3 or 4 burn items really early in the game, there have been times where I looked at the +1 and went, oh wow, that looks really good right now. So I do think it's also one of those things where it varies rather drastically depending on what the item spread of like status items, and especially status items with multi-hit effects, look like on a given character.
Now, I just want to jump in because you gave me an aha moment here. What if we took Fiery, dropped it as low as we can possibly get it, maybe started at Silver at 1, and then we take the left and the right skills and brought them back to what they used to be? So people would have to, when picking a gold skill option, they would have to go, okay, do I want Fiery with +2 burn on everything, or do I want to take, +6 here for my left-handed, and it might not be on the correct side of my board, which causes, playability for late game. Now, it
Well,
would be
that's
still
kind of
strong
the
early.
spot we're like already in though, and especially I will say I do think on all the 3 other characters I mentioned, +9 was like tremendously not okay. I actually think that +3 at bronze was more powerful than it could have been allowed to be on those characters, just with how easy it is if you have Matchbox or Vents, or even Lighter a lot of the time. Like, in order for Lighter to be stacking burn, it only needs to get to 7. If you find 1 like Cinders, and then even or like the silver skill on its own previously, silver skill, bronze Lighter already stacks burn, which is incredibly powerful in the early game. And I think that's why I was kind of okay with them tuning down the left-right flame skills to be 2, 4, 6, 8, because I still pick them.
Well, I'm really interested to see if Tempo does a change in the future and kind of what they go with. But I'm hoping they do not change this bug with the core. And
Yes,
Sixten, you
let's
had
get
something
on
you
to
wanted
that
to say
one.
about it?
okay. So guys, we have been clamoring for this or shouting from the rooftops. Give us the ability to tell our cores, because a lot of Dooley builds throughout the history haven't played the core. So finally we have that. You go to is it Mandala, right? The new bronze
Believe so,
encounter.
yeah.
Yes. And you transform your core into another random bronze medium item, and then you sell that item. And now Dooley finally has as much inventory space as the other heroes. We have been permanently -2 space since the dawn of time. So what has this shown us? it has shown us that a lot of the time it is correct to sell your core. If you like on stream, and I'm sure Snazer and Soulless have done the same, we go to that node and get rid of our core, and we're super happy about it. We waste a node just to get rid of our core. So there are two problems here, or one benefit. One thing is, it seems beneficial if players could do this without having to go to a node. It gives us more options. The problem, though, is Dooley is kind of built around playing with his cores. And in the current meta, I never have a core on my board if I can help it. I haven't had a 10-win run with a core on my board since the last patch. So this is either something good or something bad, depending on how you look at it. I think it's probably not their intention that we don't play with the cores. But I also think that given we don't play with the cores, we should probably have the option not to have to go to this weird vendor and do this. It would be better just allow us the option to sell it, right? I'm curious if you guys have opinions here, because I am for one super happy.
Like, mainly, honestly, I just feel like the cores may need a little bit of some kind of rework, because I think the big thing is, if you look at Ignition Core, it always, to me, because I've played a lot of Dooley. Dooley is my second most played character, even if I haven't played it this patch in particular or last patch, because I was off doing other stuff. But I have played historically a lot of Dooley, and I always thought one of the most noteworthy things is that when you play Ignition Core in most metas, it feels like a completely different game compared to the other cores, because it does something relevant early game, but transitions into doing something meaningful late game, because you can run it as a drill trigger, or run it with burn synergy skills, or there's a ton of things that it can kind of do. But with the other cores, a lot of the time you run into this issue of like, they're almost anti-synergistic with the whole thing that's Dooley's strength currently. Like, if you want to run Dualtron, what does the core do for you? If all you're doing is like drilling, does the core necessarily do that much for you? I feel like we're just hit with this conundrum, and I almost want to say a big part of it is just the changes that they did to enchants for the core, because that's such a huge part of it. When you could give the core a meaningful enchant, it made you want to keep it on the board, because a lot of the time enchantments are what transition early mid-game pieces into being viable late-game options, because it's kind of the next step of leveling them up once rarity stops mattering. And don't get me started on how like rarity barely matters on any of the cores either.
There was one other core that till last week we had one single core that actually made it to the late game, that you actually built your build around, like one core. It was called Crit Core, and you had motherboard, and it was beautiful. It was my second favorite build of all time. You actually had your core be your win condition. You had motherboard scale your core, and then you were happy to land the enchant on it. I put restorative, I was super happy. It's so cool. Like, we have something where the core is our builder on item. And what happened in the last patch? Motherboard was turned into a second copy of Tesla coil. There is no more builder on your core. So that was basically the final nail in the coffin for any build that actually cares about the core. So
yeah, so I feel like that's kind of the
give
crux
us back
of the matter,
motherboard,
right?
please. Yeah. I miss motherboard so much.
So I think rather than trying to give us more options for getting rid of the core, if Dooley's core identity, pun somewhat intended I suppose, is supposed to be its core, then make it do things that are core to your late game game plan.
So I think it's really funny that we started seeing this when Armor Core fell off. They nerfed Armor Core. They nerfed all the supporting shield items. They removed our duct tape and donated it to Pig, and then they come in with a slap in the face with this nitro change that's not nitro. What's it called? Sixten? No, for armor core, the armor duct tape.
Oh yes,
the
it's
new one,
the
defense matrix, right?
defense matrix. Yeah.
defense matrix. They slap us in the face with a defense matrix. They nerf the duct tape for pig because they realize, non-weapon item pig is actually not too horrible. And then they nerf all the non-weapon items on pig. And then we're over here like, you stole our duct tape, you nerfed the crap out of all our cores, you nerfed all the items that go to the cores. I mean, they even changed lens that gave core damage and made it more tech relevant. So I think we're coming to a future where if the cores don't get reworked, we're kind of screwed with them being useful. And if we go back to having the bug and we're actually able to keep it, where I'll go to a vendor every time to sell it, every time. And it would be worth if I could do that. And yes, it would be nice if I could just sell it straight out of my inventory. But I think I want the bug to stay, but I want cores to be retuned. I think armor core needs to be a completely different interaction. Yes, scaling armor is one thing, but scaling builds can't exist in how this game's going this way for armor core, not without a supporting shielding items. I mean,
You need a
and
payoff,
then
yes. You need a duct tape.
yeah,
We have
I
no
mean,
payoff for armor right now. I mean, force field, sure, but it doesn't. Force field, you don't play force field on armored core. You play force field on defense grid, the skilled, right? So there is
yeah.
a lot of room there to be explored.
It's kind of the same thing with like weaponized, right? Like a flamethrower is like vaguely a weaponized payoff, but that's like one item.
Yeah, you played the core or you played weaponized core for cybersecurity, and the core is pretty much garbage past that. They nerfed Uzi to the point where Uzi's pretty much not a playable item. They wanted us to feel like it dealt damage, but that's never why we used it. We used it as a 2-second trigger because they kept nerfing everything else, and now they've completely trashed that item. Make it 1 damage, make it 0, just do nothing, and still have your even 10 ammo would be okay from 12.
I would also add the peer conditioner. So I'm just gonna say it. Peer conditioner was one of my favorite items. They also changed that. Now it's a medium-sized beta ray, effectively in practice. So peer conditioner was another reason to run your core, because he used to say when you use the core, freeze, which actually gave you a reason to run him. Now he no longer does it instantly. Instead, he charges by 1 second, but that makes him a lot weaker. So I just feel like currently the cores have no place on Dooley. So I'm hoping that either they give us the option to just play coreless, like we start the game, we remove our core, and then we gain a bit of more gold, or they maybe rework the items so that we have more core-centric synergies, like Metal says. But give us one or two. Don't give us neither, right? Like we need either we get rid of the cores or we are able to play them. Now we're kind of like no man's land where we cannot play them, and then there is this weird interaction where we can kind of remove them, but it's clunky and unintuitive. So, Snazer, what are your thoughts on this?
So I started to also just transform and sell the core often, because mainly you're not playing the core at the moment. I think I prefer freedom. So part of that is that I would prefer us being allowed to sell cores. Though I do think they so far stated they don't want us to sell cores. So I would probably assume they will fix Mandala and you can just not change the core anymore. As far as the discussion around the core being too weak goes, I don't know. Like I think like Dooley could get like a bigger overhaul where a lot of like items are feasible, right? Like give us a lot of more items that are reasonable, give us more build variety, give us like overall more strength on more items, and then for all I care, tune down a few outliers. So make Dooley like better there. But like see also we need to put into perspective, like we're like talking here very Dooley specific, right? Like all that is like rather Dooley specific talking. I don't know in that detail how it is going with the other characters, if they're in a much better spot or not.
Yeah, I can speak extensively on this. So obviously I haven't played Vanessa or Pig this patch, but I played quite a lot of both last patch. I would say that at the time at least, we'll see how that shapes up against Mac. Pygmalion does have a lot of flexibility. We had Sunny on one of our episodes, as well as Ragnar. They both spoke quite well on this topic, where one of his things is the fact that he can generate a lot of resources, which lets you pivot to a lot of builds. But a big part of it is also the fact that he has items like Fort and like Ice Club. And not to mention pretty much all of the value scaling buildings. You have Subscraper, Skyscraper, Space Scraper, you have Fixer Upper, they pawn shop, like they are all things that you can pivot into and that scale relevantly into the late game in a way that makes the character allowed to have meaningful diversity. And I think I've felt somewhat similar about Vanessa. It varies a little bit depending on how the meta is. I think one of the main issues you can potentially run into is that they made quick starts a lot harder, and the fact that now it might be easier, honestly, but in a very Pygmalion centric meta, the issue that Sixten talked about how health scales non-linearly, becomes exasperated because to be able to have relevance outs into the late game, you need a build that scales aggressively enough to be able to do damage in oftentimes the tens of thousands, which for Vanessa is typically represented by having an extremely fast depth charge, oftentimes with something like Sick Burn to multi-charge itself. I've played things like Dragonheart Flagship, can scale up to thousands of burn, or to just play the item Keg, which, kind of ignores health. But so she does have a tendency to fall into a state where the later it goes, the more your builds kind of converge, just based on the metric of what is capable of dealing with really large health totals. That's kind of her limiting factor. Um, but so far on Mac, he's actually felt quite decently diverse to me. I'm going to go on a little bit of a Mac tangent, since I'm sure many listeners tuned in this week because they were interested to hear some thoughts about Mac. So I've mentioned, I think as far as the early game goes, a lot of the time you'll definitely want to be doing these things with the silver tier clumps of lead, just because it's sort of the most universal way that he can solve the issue of gold. And no matter what you're building on Mac, even if you're like a weapon build, you'd kind of like to have money to buy things. Turns out that's usually good. I also think he's very chocolate hungry for having like lower base health, and he also doesn't have any shielding. So a lot of the time, you really, really have to get your health up via chocolate. But outside of that, I've already felt pretty good about his build diversity. I'm a big fan of Runic Potion. I think the nerf to it was warranted, but I still think it can do interesting things because it's kind of it fills a similar role to Crow's Nest on Vanessa, where it can let you play. I had a really good run with Magnus Femur, previously Fossilized Femur, the large weapon that scales with when you slow things. You put lifesteal on that, it becomes a really fun build. He has a lot of good things that target multiple things with slows. He has the Incense, which gains targets. He has the Amber, which also gains targets. And then I actually didn't know about this, but they changed Trapping Net, I think, which is an item dropped by Vanessa's Diamond Encounter the Bounty Hunters, but that's also a Mac item. It's a two size slow item, which reads, for each weapon or friend your opponent has, +1 multicast, at something like a 5-second cooldown. So if you go up against a friend or weapon board, that thing can have, 5, 6, 7 multicast. And when you have a lifesteal weapon that scales and charges with slows, you put a haste potion on that bad boy, you start netting everything like crazy, and your femur is just going off like thousands of damage, especially if you pair it with like the crit potion or slow crit or static acceleration or what have you. So I thought that was quite fun. I haven't landed myself in a poppy field run yet, but I've gone up against a lot of poppy field boards that looked very impressive. I also do think the elephant in a room kind of is vat of acid. That item is really powerful, especially because it's one of the few kind of stealth scaling items in the game. But you're also capable of giving it so many different tags. Like shout out to Swiftwolf, who hangs out a lot in Trinet's Discord. It's a really good streamer that I used to watch back in the day. He's been posting a lot of VAT builds that I was quite inspired by, where it just showed that all you need is to find anything that can give any trigger multicast, and you can run it with the VATs. You can run it with a robotics factory if you find that, or you can just run it with the regular Max tool that gives multicast to potions. That also works. Because how the interaction ends up going is that, obviously you apply the poison the first time and then the burn, and then you reapply poison again with then twice the burn, and fiery and enchants enchants like that apply last. So if you have fiery, if you have shielded, things like that, the numbers end up becoming incredibly big, incredibly fast. Works with silencer if you get a hold of that. Just it's got a lot of synergies. It's got big numbers. It's got self-scaling. Just a really powerful item. Probably his best build, but it's one of those classic, like, you gotta find it early. You gotta start building it up. You can't necessarily just do a hyper late game VAT pivot. And then to kind of cap it off, I think what's felt like his most consistent build to me, courtesy of Walter Cooler especially, who gave me some good tips for that build and kind of showed it off a lot, is the Potion Distillery, the large Mac item that gives ammo to your potions and reduces the cooldown of your potions and lets you transform potions. And I think that the key thing there is the fact that it solves both the ammo issue, but especially the cooldown enables you to run a lot of things you otherwise wouldn't, especially after the nerf to energy potion, which no longer hastes itself, which means that it's under most normal circumstances, it's very difficult to gain permanent uptime haste unless you have it diamond and multicasting. And that's where that distillery really comes in key, because if all your potions are 15-20% faster, it opens up whole new possibilities when it comes to solving your speed control for one, and then to have things like the Vitality Potion, I think it's the name of it, the one that scales with your health. If you want to use that as a carry item, you put an offensive enchant on it, you give it multicast via the potion tool, you do still very much gotta reduce its cooldown as well. Oftentimes it wouldn't be strange to do both Hourglass and the Distillery to really bring it down, because I think it's something like 11 seconds base, which is, especially if you're applying poison, like the slowest of the stats, it's way too slow. Kind of the same thing with the Invincibility Potion. It's another really good potion, but that has a very long cooldown, and you can't even use multicast with it because the invincibility doesn't stack. You can't get like permanent invincibility. So the fact that Distillery just lets you get cooldowns down, really crucial. You could probably do something similar with Library, a very powerful item that I haven't gotten the opportunity to run and build yet. And I do also want to give a special shout out to an item that I think is really cool, that I've had quite some success with, which is the Sunlight Spear, because there's this book that Mac has, the tome, which means that every time you transform a reagent, he gets permanent regeneration. And then you can also scale up Philosopher's Stone, which is a item that gives regen every time it goes off, but the regen number scales with every time you've transformed a reagent while having it. And he also has the regen potion, which when paired with multicast can give very large regen numbers, and a skill that gives regen the first 4 times you use a potion in combat. And it all kind of converges into making Sunlight Spear, which scales with the regen on you for its burn, and then regen and burn on both players for its damage. Especially right now, when we're in a Mac meta, where there might be burn and regen on both sides of the board, I've managed to hit people for some tremendously large numbers with that item, especially in the games that, like, I couldn't get the perfect potion board together. So I think Sunlight Spear has also been super fun. I definitely recommend trying that item out. And
Now,
Metal, I have a question for you real quick.
Yep.
So I'm sure we have a lot of viewers who are either new to the game or they don't have a lot of gems, and they might be interested in potentially buying Mac, but they
Mhm.
don't know if they're gonna enjoy playing him. How would you describe or define Mac as a hero? Because you're the one who's played him the most. Like, for a player, how does he differ from the other heroes, or what is his kind of play
That's
style?
a great one
Just in
to
short.
walk through. Yeah, I think, to me, the feeling that Mac gives is he's not quite the same as like Pygmalion, who leverages economy specifically. Instead, he really does embody that element of transformation when it comes to the potion stuff, but I would put him as a character who's designed around working around limitations. Because a lot of the time, if you have reagents, you have to figure out how do I transform them. If you have potions, you have to figure out, okay, these potions are really powerful, but they're gonna need upgrades, they're gonna need enchants, and they're gonna need ammo from something. So a lot of the time you're confronted with a lot of problems that you have to figure out creative ways of solving. He has so many items that have specific enablers, like the spider mace, which goes off with both poison or slow. That's almost like a miniature drill in its own right. There's another, like the earrings, which give you max health. They scale off of both haste and slow. So there's a lot of items like that, which have kind of varied conditions that you have to figure out how to build around. But in return, he's given a lot of tools to do that with. I think one of the most crucial tips for aspiring Mac players is the fact that when you re-roll an item, be it with one of your items or one of or the mandala encounter, it will keep its rarity and its enchant. So when you're trying to get his late game builds together, a lot of the time you're trying to force specific enchants onto specific items. Like if you have a gold or diamond small item with either fiery or obsidian or poison a lot of the time, and you roll that with distillery, since it can only turn into potions, every time you have something like a 1 in 11 chance of hitting a vitality potion. And it kind of gives him this brand new way of trying to assemble boards. He gets like a new layer of agency. So I think if you're a player who enjoys creatively tackling limitations and having a lot of agency in the tools available to you in a way that I think personally really embodies that vision of being that ancient wise alchemist with all of this myriad of knowledge, that's the feeling he gives to me. So if
So,
that sounds fun, go for Mac.
so I kind of have a question for y'all
Mm-hmm.
because Metal, you brought up that an item that really surprised you was solar spear,
Sunlight, yeah.
sunlight spear, this week, and I was wondering, between Snathers and Sixten, is there any items that from this new patch and the changes that has really surprised you on performance wise? I think for me, Robotics Factory really has gone up 100%, and the skill intrusion measures is so good for this new bug build. It's kind of amazing.
That's a great question. Let me just take a look at some of my builds here.
Intrusion
If there's any item that
countermeasures,
sticks out.
just for reference, is Dooley's diamond skill that makes it so you use all your friends the first time you fall below half health in a fight.
Yes, yes.
I would say probably just the new Dooley items in general, whether it be Dualtron or the small beetles. I wasn't super high on them initially. I will say that they were buffed between the reveal and the release. So initially, when they first were announced, they weren't adjacent. They were left and or right. So they were a bit more hard to make work. But I would say I've been very pleasantly surprised by their strength and their flexibility, as well as Dualtron, which I know that Snazer and probably you also, Soulless, have felt a bit underwhelmed by. I think that Dualtron is extremely strong if you get him on like day 6, because he just kills people. He deals 1000 damage. On day 6, your Mac opponent will have 1000 health. So the Dualtron just kills them. In the late game, you land Obsidian on it. It deals 4000 damage at Diamond. You land Crit Chance, it's 8000 damage. And then it shields. So Dualtron I thought would be a very bad item. Now I regard it kind of like a pre-nerf railgun, in that if you find it very early and land a good enchant on it, you're gonna get the easiest 10-0 of your life. But it doesn't really hold up in the far late game. So those would be my like surprises for Dooley. And what about you, Snazer? Do you have any surprises?
Yeah, no, so here's the thing. Like, so there's exactly one item that I saw in its state it is right now, where I underestimated its strength. I don't remember the name, but it's the Mac item. I think it's a potion, and it's doubling its damage whenever it's used, and it was 6 seconds. So it was like this medium-sized weaponish thing that was doubling its damage every time you use it, and it has like a 6 second cooldown. That's the only item that I expected not to be like overwhelmingly strong, but like with multicast, a little bit of haste, that one is like performing amazingly good. The other ones, like surely the bugs are amazing, but like the bugs are only amazing because they got like hugely changed, and also we didn't know from the beginning how they are like upgrading themselves, right? Like that they have like multiple targets and then you self-charging them more and stuff. So for that reasons, I think there was nothing like crazily strong. That is the one item that sticks out because I didn't expect it to perform that well.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out in general to, I think, a lot of what makes Mac viable. I think many of us, like, we all kind of thought it was going to be Pendulum, but it's turned out to be the Silver Start Medium Potion tool, because it gives both multicast and works as a reload. So almost whatever core you end up in, that combination of just running whichever are your two best potions. It can be haste, it can be freeze, or it can be like actual carry stuff. Having them with multicast and a good way to reload them gives so much flexibility and power in terms of incorporating potions more broadly into what Mac is doing, which I think is really cool. It definitely feels like the alchemist should use his potions, but I think that plays a really big part in enabling that. I think it's called continuous explosive potion or something to that effect, which I don't think many people thought, like, I'm sure some people thought it was going to be good, but I don't think a lot of people thought it would turn out to be one of Mac's best items.
So tying it together to my surprise items, I have a board of the week that I
Perfect.
presented, which features.
Segue.
Yes. So this is. Oh, we actually have. So we have my biggest surprises and my favorite Mac item in the same picture here.
Yes.
So we have all the four of the bugs. We don't have the poison one, unfortunately, but 4 of the bugs and the Dualtron with Obsidian. So let me walk through the build. I have the 4 bugs. I have a shiny diamond battery. In this run, I actually went with enchanted item start for fun, and I got a shiny battery. And then I found this strength potion, which temporarily doubles the or gives you 100% crit chance, right, on all your items for like 3 seconds. So me and chat spent so much time here trying to time it so that the strength potion goes off right before the Dualtron hits first. And then I found a Blizzard, the skill from Frostrid Champion, and Blizzard freezes all your non-weapons, right? So that includes the strength potion and the shiny battery. But the Dualtron, however, gets charged when items get frozen. So you can imagine the headache in trying to calculate if Dualtron will go off before the frozen strength potion. So this was a very chaotic but fun build, and we managed to take it to 10 wins. So I love Dualtron, I love the bugs, and I felt that was a fitting way to a fitting board to represent my week in the Bazaar.
Yeah, I will say I've been super impressed with when I looked at the Dooley expansion, especially since the big Cthulhu guy in Vanessa's kit is kind of notoriously bad. He's just simply not good. And when I saw what a similar kind of stat line it felt like Dualtron had, I was very worried he'd succumb to the same fate, especially with how, like, more often than not, Dooley isn't, like, super enthused about large items. I thought maybe you'd have to use the mainframe to make it work or something, but then you run into it on the ladder and it just smacks you over the head with its giant mecha body, and you go, okay, no, actually, this guy seems pretty legit. And I'm happy about that. I feel like an expansion like that deserves its kind of signature card to be, if not, amazing, at least relevant and something you can make work. So,
Oh, one final thing
good
about the
one.
bugs. The art is amazing. If you don't know,
Yes. Oh,
the background art for the bugs is synced up so that if you have the bugs in the right order, the art will match up in the background. There is like this line that goes across the back of their art, and that becomes a beautiful half circle when they are perfectly lined up. So if you are tired and you're playing Dooley and you don't know which order the bugs should go in, just follow the art. It's so good game design. I love when like the visuals match the mechanics. So just kudos to the art team there and the developers for actually putting in the extra work there, because I love this kind of design in games. It makes it so much more intuitive for like new players to learn mechanics. So just a bit of a shout out there.
I don't know if it's been posted anywhere yet, so I would definitely like make a my first ever plea, my request to Tempo. Please, please, please give us a wallpaper with the full art of all the bugs lined up. There has to be a complete picture. I would love to see it. They are so cute, and they're definitely the main reason that I'm really excited to dive into the Dooley expansion at some point in the future. I need the complete artwork. I see, Snazer, you've sent some builds as well. Did you want me to bring those up too?
So you can bring them up. It was just because to the conversation we had in the
Yeah, let's see.
yeah,
We got
chat.
this first one here, the triple blue bug nitrogen hammer. That's a great one to bring up, actually. Like, I've noticed, I think a lot of people have noticed, this big Yeti guy, he like kind of beats you up these days. I've died more times to him this patch than I have like ever in total previously.
Yeah,
Nitrogen hammer, is that a real item now?
Yeah, it is. Like so basically I think like unless you're like having like very strong one-shotty builds, you are having like a really hard time to beat this Yeti. Like he's like close to unbeatable for I would say most builds because of his iceberg and nitrogen hammer synergy. Um, I do think Nitrogen Hammer is actually like a really, really, really strong item, but it needs a little bit of setup, right? You need to have either like at least one or two of these beetles, or like one beetle and a coolant. So you need to have like some sources of freeze or freeze enchant or something else. But if you have like sources of freeze, that hammer is gonna go really fast and is scaling like crazy. So this is like a really, really fun and cool build that is now rather achievable.
Yeah, there we go. Love I just love the bugs in like every way. They're so cute. They're so nice. I'll unlock them soon. I'm doing it the normal way because I figured, hey, I want to play a bunch of Mac anyways. Might as well. But I'm super excited to play with the bugs. I'm super excited to play with all of Vanessa's new friends. This is such a good patch. With all
Now,
that
Metal,
said, yes, do you have a final point to
I
add,
I
Solus?
sent you a tag in with the photo of my board.
Oh, yes, there we go. Yes, one final board of the week. And for any listeners, if you have any interest in submitting your own board of the week, you can do so on my Discord. You can do so on Sixten's Discord, and you can also do so at our business email, which is abazaarpodcast@gmail.com. And here we have our final one. Let me rescale it properly. This is a robotics factory bug board, I would describe it as. Why don't you walk us through it?
So this whole board is just small items that really kind of just function really well together. Ironically, I was able to get the monster skill Necrophiliac, which really gets you flung into doing as much turbo turnover for bug charging as you possibly could think of. And then having like creeping toxins is really interesting because this board's actually focused on killing your opponent through poison. As you can see, the wasp is shielded, and it kind of gives you a variability of sustain and being able to trigger Aiden 3x times because of the shiny robotics factory. I was able to live through one-shot builds that normally you would never have to. And then I had to put Cole on there, our good old friend that has never been very viable. Just because he scales to like 3 to 400, because each one of these in the setup trigger about 66 times.
They gave him a pretty significant buff too, right?
Yes.
yes, Cole is good now actually at gold and above. I would say that he's finally playable. The problem is just that he's like the 11th item on the board. There's
Yeah.
usually
Yeah,
something
yeah.
better, but if you don't have something better, Cole will do the job. So big thumbs up to that. Cole is finally an item.
There we go.
Finally.
Well, perfect time to wrap it up then. Let's move on to our socials. Soulless, is there anywhere in particular people can find you?
You guys can find me in game as Soulless Death. You can find me in Sixten's stream, Snazer's stream. You can find me here in MetallFenix's stream. Pretty much everywhere. I am trying to be the biggest part of the community, get information out to y'all. Definitely visit their Discords. There are amazing builds being posted every day, almost every 5-10 minutes. And there's a lot of references there that can really help you get a handle on some of this new information and this new item changes that have come out.
Awesome. And Snazer, for those who need a refresher, where can they find you?
I have a official Discord now, Snazer, and I have a Twitch channel where I regularly stream. So feel free to check it out. And yeah.
Awesome. And you have a YouTube as well, I believe?
Yes, but like there's just like the VODs. So I mean, I have a YouTube. Feel free to follow it, but it's not like extra work there.
There we go. And Sixten, what about you?
Yes, you can find me at Twitch at 2610. I have a Discord server. You can find that link probably in the description of this podcast. I have a YouTube channel. In fact, the board I just posted is the video I just released. It was scheduled for tonight. And yeah, I try and post regular YouTube content. One highlight from the stream per day, and then I also have like Snazer VODs. Yeah, that covers me.
Right, and for me, you can find me at twitch.tv/MetallFenix. Unfortunately, I stream a little bit more sporadically due to my day job, but it's been going quite well. We finally hit affiliate just this Monday, I believe. I'm trying to stream as often as I can. We have been getting multiple streams a week at least. Hopefully, this weekend I'll be able to do some longer streams as well. We're unusually recording on a Friday instead of a Saturday, but the episode will go live on Sunday as per usual. On YouTube, I am also MetallFenix with 2 L's and an F. All of the stuff's in the description as per usual. I upload highlights of whichever the best games that I've played that week are. I also have a Discord. Feel free to come in, share your builds. Since I play more or less all of the characters, I'm also more than happy to answer questions. If anyone's got those, feel free to just hit me up there, or if there's honestly any kind of requests for things you'd like featured on the podcast, we're more than happy to welcome more community engagement on that point as well. But with all that said, a reminder that as per usual, you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Spotify, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, you can find us via RSS feed in your podcast listening app of choice. But that will be all from us for this week. We hope you have enjoyed this episode, and we hope to see you again next week. And have a wonderful day, night, evening, wherever it is, wherever you are, and we'll see you next time.